Welcome back to Build Propulsion Lab at JCON Europe, coming to you live from Cologne, Germany. And my next guest is Martin Lippert. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you for being here. And I understand, Martin, that you work on build tools and build Spring tools and Spring IDE and this kind of stuff.
Yes. Yeah, I lead the little small team that built these Spring IDE extensions for your favorite IDE. It's Eclipse or VS Code.
No, keep going.
And we don't do the stuff for IntelliJ.
Exactly. That was like, that's the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
And that's the fun discussion. Exactly.
Yeah, but our strategy. So my goal is really to make you more productive if you are a Spring developer, right? So that's my goal, right? So wherever you are, I don't want to convince you to use a specific IDE. I would like to make you more productive. So if you use IntelliJ, they have already great Spring tooling, so nothing for me left to do. That's awesome. So please continue to do that, and please continue to use that.
Yeah.
If you like another IDE, like if you prefer VS Code as a lightweight editor, or if you prefer Eclipse, whatever, we basically try to bring you up to speed with the Spring tooling on that, so that you get kind of a really good experience using Spring in these environments as well. So that's kind of the short story around IntelliJ and Eclipse and VS Code or whatever. So I'm perfectly comfortable with all of them. And I don't want to convince you of any of those specific
it was
right?
It was a little bit of fun trolling, obviously.
Yeah.
And we've been in this discussion since back to STS or whatever it was called many years ago. It was always fun. And I guess, that's legit. They don't need your help. So let them do their thing, and you will put your efforts in where there are gaps, and you can make developers more productive.
Exactly.
Speaking about developers being more productive, obviously Build Propulsion Lab, it's all about developer productivity.
Yes.
Tell me you have decades of experience in exactly that. So tell me what, in your perspective, are the most important aspects of productivity when it comes to developers writing code?
Yeah, I think, so what we are looking at from the Spring angle in these IDE extensions is really to do basically three things, right? First is we try to make it really easy to get started, right? So write your first Spring project or whatever, make it really easy, really convenient to get up your first Spring project, whatever. So with the extensions, you can basically, if you download the IDE, you can have your first Spring Boot project running in 20 seconds or something like that, right? Ready to use in your IDE, it's super easy. That's, I think, one of the very important pieces.
Absolutely.
The second important piece, I think, is that if you go beyond these kind of getting started and hello world things, that we try to make it easy for you to understand your code base, right? Because you have large projects, large code bases, and they grow over time. And usually you have a specific, especially if you do Spring Boot development and Spring development, you have
there is some magic there that you really need the help of IDE to take you to places.
Yeah, and you have a specific view on your project, right? You don't necessarily think about classes and interfaces. Sometimes you think about controllers or repositories, whatever. So we bring this level to the IDE so that it's easy for you to understand where are all my controllers, where are all my repositories, what are all the request mappings that I have in my project to make this really easy, navigatable, really easy to understand and get an overview. And the third thing, and that's probably addressing the magic part a little bit, is that if you run your Spring Boot project, something happens at runtime, right? And
exactly.
Some people say it's magic, some people know exactly what's going on behind the scenes, but there's still this kind of a little bit of a gap between you look at your source code and you have an idea about what you want, and then something happens at runtime. So what we do in the tooling is we try to bridge this gap for you. So when you run your Spring Boot project, you get live information from this running instance, and we show this in line with the source code. So for example, you have your Spring Bean or a component or a configuration. So we show inside of the source code if this configuration is actually active in your running application, or if this bean is really wired to the right injection points that you have, and where do the injection beans come from in the running thing, so that you can see this directly in your source code. Because that's, I think, what most developers look at.
Exactly.
And they have an idea about what should happen at runtime. And if this does not happen at runtime, we help them trying to understand what happens at runtime versus what is in the source code, and that we show that directly in the source code, which I think is is pretty nice.
Yeah, no, but that's exactly kind of the what I asked about. So it's like easy to get started, understanding your project, and then understanding what's happening when the project is running.
Yeah.
And it's really those things that will make developers much more productive when they work with their IDE. That makes perfect sense. So speaking about this kind of magic, what we mentioned with Spring Boot. So there is, and obviously you're biased because you work for Spring team. I am biased because I love Spring as a framework. But just to like make our conversation a little bit more spicy, that there is this school of thought that it's too much magic. It's nice when it works, but when something breaks, you cannot understand anything that's happening, and you would be better off maybe working harder, but knowing better what's going on and what's not. What's your take on that?
Oh, that's a difficult questions. I don't really have a specific opinion on that from the tooling perspective. I really look at those things mostly from the tooling perspective side and from the IDE perspective, not so much from the, let's say, which programming style people love and people like. If you know Spring and you say you're a big fan, so you know that there are kind of tons of different ways how to use Spring and how to build your project using Spring. You can use different ways to do these in bean models and injections and whatever. So you can basically choose what fits best your preferred style of programming.
Tune the level of magic to your tolerance.
Yeah, you can say, oh, I would like to make everything super explicit. I can keep all the magic in place and just tune it a little bit here and there. So you have choice, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, that's great. And from the tooling perspective, I would like to make you productive whichever choice you make, right? So I don't want to tell you, oh, please do this, please do that. I really would like to help you being productive in whatever version or whatever variant you use or you prefer.
So I can be much more opinionated than you are. You're like the Switzerland because you have to play nice with everybody and all the styles. I would say that the productivity gains from the magic on how productive can you be when you use everything that a tool like Spring Framework and especially Spring Boot gives you is much more significant than the losses, if you wish, from when you are stumbled against something that you don't understand, especially when you have great tool support in runtime that you mentioned. So yes, you are not sure why it behaved the way it behaved, although you didn't plan it that way, and maybe it's not exactly what you need. But if you have a good support from tooling, you can actually see why it happened and tweak it and make sure that it does exactly the way you want it to be. But everything else, all the time, the benefits that you get from like just drawing another annotation there and having a full support of, I don't know, the next big thing like chat LLMs like ChatGPT or whatever, Spring AI project with one annotation on Spring data. The amount of code that you don't need to write is staggering, and eventually you have to write this code. And not only that, you have to maintain this code afterwards. And this is a very significant productivity hit that you won't take if you will use projects like Spring Data and Spring AI and Spring Boot.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Right. So,
totally.
but it puts a lot of pressure on you, on the tooling team.
For building great tools for that, right?
Because otherwise, if it's all obscure and you try to write it in Notepad and you have no idea what's going on, that would be a nightmare.
Yeah, I of course, I don't see this as an obstacle or whatever. It's a great challenge and a great opportunity to build great tooling, right? So, and I think we can do, especially with the support from the Spring Boot actuators that we use under the hood to get this runtime information. So that is kind of part of the running thing that you build and part of the framework. It already gives you all this information out of that. So that is, I think, a great source that we use for that. So there's actually not a lot that the tooling needs to be built on top, right? We just take this information that Spring gives us and we map this onto the source code. That's the real, let's say, the little magic that we add in the tooling to make this easy to use and convenient to use, and map that onto source code to bridge this gap. But it's actually not a huge burden to really build.
And I think the benefit of having the tooling team within the Spring team is that the rest of Spring team thinks about how to make it easier on you. And then JetBrains benefits from all this infrastructure that is made for you based on what you are doing, and they can make other IDEs great as well for Spring. So it's a win-win.
And sometimes it even goes the other way around, right? So there's the Spring team and the framework team, the Boot team, they also collaborate with the JetBrains tools teams. And sometimes they have a great idea, they want to build something awesome, so the Spring team does something specific for them, or maybe not specific for them, but something that they can build into the framework to make it easier to build this tooling. And then we can adopt that as kind of a second step and say, oh, this is a great idea. We should do that as well for the other IDEs and benefit from that. So it's kind of it goes into both sides.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right, so I want to finish with like something very fun. What's your favorite IDE?
VS Code.
All right, you got it. Because lightweight and stuff.
Yeah, I really love the lightweight flavor of it, and I really like these kind of the modern lightweight feel and the architecture behind the scenes. I also like very much from the tooling building perspective, because it opens up the doors to so many new ways to build developer tools and so many modern ways to build developer tools.
The language server.
The language server protocol, the remote container development things that you can do. It opens up the world for cloud-based development IDEs and things like that. So you can really do a lot of stuff with it. And it's really built on this great new foundation that really feels very modern and very addresses really awesome gaps that we had in the past in a very nice way. So I really love that.
Yeah, that's pretty, I agree with you, pretty innovative and fresh.
Yeah.
Right, and I think JetBrains Fleet is kind of we need to keep an eye open for that, because that should be their answer, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
But again, fascinating market and time to be in.
Absolutely.
And very relevant for each and every one of us. Each and every developer should be very interested in seeing advancements in the IDE and tooling space.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
With that, Martin, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. It was very interesting.
Thanks for having me.
And I learned, our audience learned, and you stay tuned for more interviews at Build Propulsion Lab at JCON Europe, coming to you live from Cologne, Germany tomorrow. With that, thank you.
Thank you.